Absolutely.
Till we're all growing a beard. A man's face should never be bare. We just want some facial hair. We're anticipating, yeah, everyone's waiting for beards.
Hey, well, good morning, everybody. We're glad you decided to join us. This is Behind the Beards. And here we pull the curtain back, take a look behind the scenes, and we do our best to reveal the things that you need to know about the people who are called to lead your churches and your ministries. I'm Joshua Fowler, a preaching minister in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And my partner, my friend, my brother on the other side of the screen here, Aaron Partlow, a youth minister in Topeka, Kansas.
That's me.
The great state of wheat and corn.
That's what they know us for.
Yeah. And, Kansas City, which is kind of that little odd place in Kansas, right? What's going on this morning, man? Doing all right?
We're doing good. Everyone who was here for the pre-show, I got to play the ukulele a little bit. That is always a joy of mine. Is the last 4 years we have written a camp song. So we which I don't take credit for the notes, anything like that. We take a song that's fun and early to sing, fun and easy to sing, and then we just change the lyrics. Are you talking about my bang?
I think he's talking about your singing, but I didn't think it was too early.
Ouch. Thanks, Deb. Appreciate it. The guy who woke us up singing my entire life. Like, give me a break. So we would write camp songs every year. There was a bunch of us. A lot of kids bring ukuleles to camp, so we played during free time. A couple guitars, the real rebels. We had one kid bring a bassoon. I'm just kidding. Nobody brought a bassoon. I had a kid bring a saxophone one year. He was like, I just really wanted to jam with you guys, but I only know how to play saxophone. So that was, if you guys don't know, that's from Sesame Street, and that's I Don't Want to Live on the Moon. And it's a really cute Sesame Street song. I play it to Sam actually quite a bit. So we changed the words for that one. And that year we stole from Soul Quest, where they do gum sculpting. So we had an encounter where they had to chew bubble gum, and then they had to create art in front of them out of that chewed bubblegum gum while they were blindfolded. So not only were their jaws tired, which by the way was very nice because they did that right into Bible class. So they were quiet for Bible class, which sometimes is kind of nice.
It can be nice.
It was fun. It was fun.
Well, hey, on a little different note, we were just talking beforehand, and tomorrow's Veterans Day, right? And so we just want to take a moment before we begin and just say thank you to all those who have served in our armed forces and have helped create a place where we live with the amount of freedoms that we have. Mm-hmm. I know sometimes we feel like those freedoms are under attack, but just simply the fact that we live in a place where we can express those things, no matter how controversial other people may think they are, to do the things we do, to worship the way that we worship, to live the way that we live. So we want to say a huge thank you to those who have served. Not that we're ignoring those who are currently serving, but Veterans Day honors those who have hung up the uniform and kind of look back on those times. We are indebted to you for that service. So thank you.
Right. Thank you.
As we kind of start looking at our podcast for today, did I really say that? We're looking at some of the funny things kind of that accidentally come out of our mouths, and sometimes the things that people hear and really connect with that we didn't even realize we said. I've had that happen on more than one occasion where I've kind of said, I didn't realize that was a part of my lesson, but I'm really glad that's what you heard, if that's what you needed to hear. So get you kind of thinking about some things. What are some funny things that you have said that were not intended? You ever had any verbal faux pas where a phrase or something gets out of your mouth and you're like, oh, no, that's not what I meant to say?
So funny story, kind of along that lines, and funny story to kind of start this off. While you guys are thinking about this question, what are some funny things that you have said that were not intended? There's two women in my life who have always done the same thing, and it made me laugh. One of them no longer does it, but one of them does. One would be my mother. When I started preaching, and I don't know if she did this every time or just one time, but the one time really stuck out. But she used to like make a list of all the words that I made up for my sermon. And then she would show me the list when we went to lunch afterwards. And it always made me laugh. Like, it was never done out of like to make me feel bad or anything like that. It was always to help me improve and to get better. But I found it like genuinely hilarious. And then when I got here at Central, there was one of the elders' wives, Diana Carragher. She did the same thing a couple times, and it always made me laugh. And she did it out of good humor and good fun and stuff like that. But like, yeah, a list of words that I would make up. But because apparently I'm a creator, and I create words, so it's kind of funny.
That is really funny. So my mother, her name is Pam, and I still find some Pamisms that come out in my speech.
Nice.
She has a way of mixing metaphors. Like, she's like, well, that's just water under the dam, or that's water over the bridge. Or she'll say something like, hey, that's like jumping out of the frying pan and into the kitchen. It's like it's out of the frying pan into the fire, but that kind of stuff.
That's funny.
And so it's it's pretty funny when those things kind of come about. And every time she says some of those things, it's like, that's a momism, that's a Pamism. And some of those still kind of come into some of my other language. I'll say them, and even my wife will say, that's one of your mom's sayings, isn't it? Like, yeah, it was. I like this. Extort one another. It's bad when you say it once. It's really bad when you say it over and over and over again.
Yeah, no joke. My mom and I do the same thing. I think I listen to my mom a lot more than she thinks, and so we will always say the same metaphor for something. Like just the other day, we were talking about someone, and we're like, "Oh man!" And at the same time, we said they just fell for that hook, line, and sinker. Like at the same time, and I wasn't mocking her or anything, and I was like, "I am my mother." One of those things. So it was just kind of really funny.
Back to the Future.
I don't know what that means.
I put that up there to see if maybe you knew where that was coming from.
I don't. I don't know where. I don't think my dad's had his coffee this morning.
Hey, you never know. There's probably a story there somewhere.
One of my favorite things about this, or what are some funny things that you have said that were not intended, is sometimes like allowing, or not allowing, but hearing the teens tell a story about something that happened in the youth group. You know what I mean? Like you were there, and so you know what happened exactly. And the story that they're telling, like, just like, like you may have had to like put on the brakes a little bit quick to get to a stoplight. And they're like, we skid for like 20 feet and the sirens, and there was a helicopter. And for some reason, my phone caught on fire, and that's why it's broken. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some really funny moments where like it truthfully like happened that way. Like I remember we went to Texas, and I set my phone on the console of the van, and we were in a parking lot, and I tapped the brakes just to like see if everyone was awake, be like, hey, what's up? And my phone just went whoosh, right through the console and was sitting on the engine of the van. And the only way to get it was to do that exact same thing and have it fall off of the engine onto the floor. So, okay, this makes more sense now. Make like a tree and get
out of here. I've forgotten about that. I appreciate you bringing that back up. One of my favorite movies, Back to the Future, and I can't believe that reference didn't come, because I remember hearing that now and going, that's something my mother would say.
That's funny.
No, you talk about, and this is a little off topic, but it's a story worth telling. We're on our way back to the airport in Honduras from Trujillo, which is the village we work in. And Honduras is notorious for roads suddenly being gone.
Yes.
And it feels like we are flying. But we're probably only going about 45 miles an hour because of the way the roads are so curvy. And I'm following this little car, and all of a sudden, this little vehicle just, boom, gets off the road. And I realize there is no road in front of us. It's not like a cliff or anything, but the road is gone, and it's just this hole. We've been working for 10 days, so everyone's asleep in the van. Everyone has bought coffee and vanilla and all the things that you always buy when you go to Honduras. And I slam on the brakes in this little rental van that we are in. And all I hear is the sound of bodies rolling off the seats into the floorboard. And every bottle of vanilla that anyone has bought over the trip is now at the front of the van, along with all the coffee at my feet. And like 3 people kind of sit up and they're like, what happened? It's like, no worries. We're gone. And we're moving along.
It's fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
It's all good, you know.
I remember driving in Honduras and being terrified because I did not know, and I sat on the right side of the bus on the way to where we were going, which means that I was looking off of the cliff and going, what are we driving on? And is this like the magic school bus? Are we flying? Because I don't understand what this wheel is touching right now, because there ain't nothing here, man.
But I can only imagine the stories that kind of get told when they go back home. And maybe that's why only a few people make that return trip, because maybe parents say, oh, no, you're not going back.
That's probably true.
There's a lot of phrases, you know, when I'm preaching, especially because I used to transcript my sermons, and I wouldn't read them when it came time to deliver them, but I would have read through them enough that I almost had them memorized. Mm-hmm. And the more I got into preaching, the more I really liked just the freedom of having like a skeleton outline. And I don't want to demean people who transcript preach, like the Spirit doesn't work through them that way. But for me, I felt much more at ease just allowing myself to go with some thoughts that come into my mind as I'm going through and kind of reading people. But often phrases will come to mind that I'll begin to say, and it's like, oh man, that is a really difficult series of words to put together accurately. And so there's a lot of those things, and I'm racking my brain trying to come up with some, and I really can't. You can YouTube, you know, some funny little occurrences that
I know.
You see preachers like, and you know, talking about Abraham and Lot, and like as soon as he says like the wrong words, his face turns red, and he's like, "Oh, I hope this isn't being recorded." It's like, not only is it being recorded, you've gone viral, bud. And
right?
like you have those moments where it's like, I think I should just stop the sermon here, because no one is going to remember anything from this sermon except, you know, that phrase that I just completely botched.
Or
you can't get out of it.
Or you use a non-sermon appropriate word, right? So like, I don't know, like I'm gonna lose we're gonna lose all of our 4 viewers right now, but I say like the word crap like a lot, and I probably will stop once Sam starts saying it, you know. But
which is soon, probably.
Which is really soon, probably already. But you know, like I'll say, oh man, crap. And I remember saying that in a sermon one time, and I just I never received such, like, all those beautiful elderly women who always smile at the sermon just turned to like dagger eyes, like, you are preaching, you are not allowed to say that word from the pulpit. You know, and so that always makes me laugh too, is when I say one of those, I'll be like, you know, and what the crap is with this? And then people are like, you can't say that, you're preaching. You need to use a better word. Be like, you're right. I should, or stupid. Yeah, Heather, that's a good one. We are so stupid when you can't say that.
I get in trouble for that. So stupid was the S word in our house. Yes, the stupid was the S word. Let's go here so people don't get confused.
That's right. I was just talking about crap.
So, that was in our house. Like, my kids would come in and say, he said the S word. And I'm like, oh, stupid. Like we still don't say that in our house, but that's better than what first went through my mind. And I will say that sometimes, and I will get the admonition afterwards going, there are children. Right. And some of these houses do not allow their kids to say that. You shouldn't be saying that. I'm like, yes, you're correct.
Yes. This was my S word.
Yeah.
Screws up. When we screw up, I always say that. I still say that.
I do a lot of preaching in Spanish with our Spanish ministry here when we go to Honduras. And, language completely changes everything. I had a friend of mine who is actually a missionary in Honduras. And when he was first there, he spoke Spanish pretty well. But he was talking about being reconciled as a people. And, he said, when we have disagreements, we need to just hug one another and be better. And he said, we need to embrace one another, which makes sense, to embrace one another. But the word for hug is abrazar.
Abrazar.
Embraçar means to impregnate. So in his sermon, he said, we just need to impregnate one another and get along. And as soon as he said it, he goes, as soon as the words came out of my mouth, I knew exactly what I had said, but I had no idea how to fix it. And everyone in the audience just starts chuckling and laughing. They realize this gringo from Canada has just really messed up his Spanish, and they just watched him as he squirmed trying to figure out the right word to correct.
So funny. That's like legitimately hilarious. However,
so there are a lot of things that are really, really difficult to say correctly. So sometimes we have that, did I really say that moment where things are just, you just completely say the wrong thing. There's those other times where I have this sermon or lesson that is just so carefully crafted and so planned out. And I get to the end of it, and the looks and comments I get are like, yeah, that was okay. It's like, no, that was a home run, man. My illustrations were on point. They were relevant. They really hit home, didn't they? And it's like, yeah, it's okay. You'll get them next time, kind of a thing. Come on, man. I get those regularly. It's like, yeah, it was okay. It was good.
I do too. So I am a transcriptor. I transcript my sermon. But I also do something. I learned to do something with color. So like I transcript, but I have key phrases that are in a certain color, phrases that like I want to say word for word. I have blocked stories that are in a different color, and then I have my passages are all in a different color. So I use 3 different colors when I preach. And I have it that way. And so when I do that, it just helps me. Again, there are some moments where I do have to look down at my paper and read, because I want to make sure I say it exactly the way I mean it. And stop laughing at all my dad's comments. He's not that funny. We're just gonna have to have my dad on the show, I guess.
I agree.
I did help them buy a new computer, so they have a good camera. So, and now he's like, ooh. Anyway, I don't even know what I was gonna say now, guys. No longer my podcast.
No, this was one of my favorite TV shows growing up, though. Family Matters. Did I do that? I've caught it on.
Did you know Urkel was not a main character, but was a side character? But because he got so popular with the audience that they wrote him in as a main character after his first appearance.
I could believe that. It was catching. Nice little trivia for the win.
This is what I was saying. Okay, back to me. Come on.
Back to you. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I feel the same way. So I transcript my sermons, and sometimes they feel like they are awesome. You're right, and you do so well, and everything is so great. Same with the Bible class. So I'm going to talk about Bible class instead of a sermon. So I work really hard on our Bible classes, and this all started from I never wanted to be this guy, right? Dudley Chansley, one of my favorite. He's a good mentor, good friend. All this kind of stuff. He's awesome. But he once said in a class, he walked into the classroom and he made a joke about youth ministers, which was a joke, but not, but was like also kind of serious. He says, yeah, because, you've all been there where you walk into Bible class and you open the Bible and you just kind of shoot from the hip, And I thought to myself, I said, man, like, this is a guy who's done youth ministry successfully for so long. He's inspired so many people. I never want to be like the butt end of one of a Dudley's jokes. Like I never want to be, maybe that's a phrase you shouldn't say either. I don't know. I never want to be like that youth minister. So I work really hard on all of my Bible classes. Even if we're just reading scripture, like we did a Matthew study where we just read through Matthew. I read multiple translations and formulate questions and good pausing moments for us. But yeah, it's amazing how you can sit there. You can have like this Bible class that you've planned out, that you've gone through, that you've worked through, and then the kids walk away and go, "Cool, thanks, appreciate it." And then and then like you can have one where you shoot from the hip. Maybe you didn't get to do it as long because you got ambushed by people all day, so you didn't get to work 4 or 5 hours on your Bible class. And then literally I'm thinking of one of my teens, Tommy Goodrich, one time texted me, never ever texted me after a Bible class, texted me and said, Aaron, man, that was exactly what I needed to hear tonight, and I appreciate that. Would you mind sending me the Bible class notes, because I want to go over that again. It just meant so much to me. And I was like, I don't have any Bible class notes. I gotta write some Bible class notes and send it to Tommy tomorrow.
Did anyone record the lessons? So I know what I said. I
had to reply and be like, yeah, man, I'll get those to you tomorrow, for sure. And I had to like go back and think and like rewrite or write that Bible class from what I remembered and send it to him.
Yeah. There are some jokes, and of course, Dylan my youngest is a huge fan of The Office, and there's a lot of jokes that I remember growing up that have accidentally come out, like crack a joke to my dad or my mom, and it's like, oh no, this was not the right avenue to deliver, the old joke. One of them was, I'm sorry I asked. And I remember asking my mom when I'm coming in. We were in Midkiff out in West Texas. And I'm coming up and I holler into the back door. I say, hey, Mom, what's for dinner? And she said, sandwiches. And I said, sorry, I asked. I didn't have dinner that night.
Yeah, no.
I also had a week's worth of chores to do. But that was so funny with, my friends, right? So there are some places where those things are appropriate. And I've been in one of those sermons, kind of mentioned what you were saying, and what we're talking about here before was where, everything is just like I've wanted it and everything's going just as I planned. And you're looking out over the audience and it's just deadpan.
Mm-hmm.
A joke that you planned well and kind of cracked doesn't even get a chuckle from your wife. And it's like, oh no. Yeah. This isn't the normal, people are kind of tuning me out kind of lack of response. Like, how if the intro isn't working, the rest of this is not going to go well, because everything's kind of hinged on getting into the lesson a certain way. And I'm not a big proponent of shifting gears right in the middle of something. And so sometimes you just have to grit your teeth and get through it and count on the Spirit to do some things that you didn't plan, right?
That's I rely on the Spirit quite a bit. to be honest. Yeah, I actually, but like on a real note, like I think it is really important to some people. Ooh, I hate that phrase. We can have the mentality of, it doesn't take that long to write a sermon. Why does it take the preacher? Why does it take the youth minister, 2 days to write a sermon? I'd like to remind people and remind myself that I might write my sermon in 1 day, but I am praying over my sermon for those 2 days. I am searching and seeking God's word for what he wants me to preach on Sunday, for what he wants me to teach on Wednesday night. It's not that I can't write a 45-minute Bible class in 30 minutes before. I can, and it's really easy, and I could do it. And shoot, I could open up the Dropbox and pull out a class that I did 4 years ago and just say, we're doing this. But I think if you are doing ministry full time and if you're doing ministry serious, and I think this is really important, is that we are being prayerful about what we're doing. We're being involved in people's lives. We understand what's going on in culture, and we want to bring a lesson that is relevant, something that sticks. And the only way that you're going to do that is if you're in prayer with God. And if you're not in sync, I mean, I would love to be in sync with God, but let's be fair, that's not, I fail on that every day, but we have to tap into that spirit. We have to allow him to guide us and allow him to lead us. And so I might write my sermon. I've actually been there with Lauren, and I've written a sermon, and she's like, "Oh, you finished it?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And then I rewrite it. Actually, I think the last sermon that I preached, I wrote the entire thing. I had it all done. And like a day before, like I think on Saturday, I told Lauren, I said, I can't preach that sermon. I said, it is dry, crusty bread. I've got to preach this sermon. And I rewrote my sermon, and preached it. And again, I felt like I did a good job. I felt like I was in tune to the Spirit. And at the same time, I feel like it really reached the audience. But yeah, there's if you wonder why it takes so long to write a sermon, it's not like writing a thesis paper for college, right? We all learned how to do that the day before it was due in the library, but listening to the Spirit, and it takes time to listen to God.
Yeah. Well, if you find yourself not being in sync with God, maybe you could try being a Backstreet Boy with God.
That's right. Oh. Thank you. Oh,
yeah. Or one of the new kids on the block. There you go, Heather. That's
all right. And this is my podcast now. So we are kicking Josh out of the podcast, and
no. So the bones for my sermon, the outline for my sermon is typically ready by Tuesday.
Is that God calling?
Maybe. It's probably a telemarketer. That's where they typically try to. I'm making so many of those calls lately. This is a survey. Or our extended warranty is expired.
We've been trying to reach you for your extended warranty. Yeah, I get those. I never answer I have an Oregon phone number, and I never answer the phone if it's an Oregon number calling me. Because if it's an Oregon number and I don't have you saved in my phone, I don't know you.
It's spam. Yeah.
You're spam.
No, so my outline is typically done, and lately, since we're starting back up on Sunday evenings, I'll stay here at the building on Sunday, and I'll actually write the outline for my next week's sermon on Sunday afternoon. But the amount of information, the bones don't change,
right?
But the amount of information that changes in between varies so radically throughout the week. And, in contrast to when you have something that's really, really, really well prepared and you just feel really on point about it, I find there are so many of my lessons that I finish up. And when I finish, I'm thinking, I don't know, man. I just didn't feel it. That really wasn't there. And people will come up to me and say, I needed that. Like you said, with right? Tommy, or that was one of the best sermons you've preached. I'm like, seriously? That stunk.
Right. Yeah.
And they'll say, man, when you were talking about this, that just really resonated with me. And I'll be thinking, I don't remember saying that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And so the Spirit of God works powerfully. And I think a lot of times what happens is when I get so confident in myself and my preparation and my ability, I don't allow my heart and my mind to let the Spirit work, to come in and really move. And not just to move in people, but to move in me in that moment, because there are ways that you can say the same thing. Yeah. Whereas, if I'm just kind of surrendered to the way, the Spirit will work through my words, and I'm realizing not that I'm unprepared, but that I'm just not as confident as I feel like I should be. I feel like the Spirit really takes hold of that and says, good, now you're out of the way. Now let me go to work.
Yeah. When I stop relying on myself and rely on God to carry me through it, it's quite a different outcome.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like I need a month to work on a sermon myself, Stephen. I never realized, of course, when I was in youth ministry, I always wanted to preach. And then I got a job preaching, and I realized I had to come up with something new to say 104 times a year. I mean, that's just
make it meaningful.
First year and a half were good. I had all kinds of resources, but after a year and a half in preaching, I was like, I have no more sermon calendars to put out. I've got to create my own. And so I usually spend the Thanksgiving holiday kind of planning out 8 months or so of lessons of what we want to go through and look back at where we've been. And just kind of seeing, what do our people need to hear? What's going on in our community and our culture? What's going on? Whether it be, is this a election year? Are we going to need some sermons that bring us a little more centered on Christ around that time because of all of the things that transpire around us?
Absolutely, yeah.
And then, of course, you have athletic events, which are a huge deal here in South Louisiana. Football's pretty big down here, and a lot of things focus around that. And so understanding how the seasons of life flow for people, what's going to connect and resonate in those moments. And there's been so many times, though, where I remember sitting in a sermon that Kent Allen preached one time. And as he was preaching, I'm looking at the people around me going, I wonder if everybody else is hearing the same thing I'm hearing, because this feels really directly pointed at me. Like we could be sitting in a room one-on-one and he could be talking to me with what's going on.
There was a reason why I always went to Memorial Road's Wednesday night college class. I did not attend there on Sunday mornings. We went to Wilshire and enjoyed it. And that's where Lauren and I placed membership. But I would always go Wednesday night. And that was because McMillan, what was his first name? Jeff McMillan personally wrote a sermon every Wednesday night for me and would preach it to all these college kids. I don't know why they were there, but yeah, he would always preach a personalized sermon for me that week. And it just recharged me and refreshed me. And to be honest, I miss those days. I really miss days worshiping with a bunch of people my own age in the same room, praising God the way that we praised God together as a community. And it was so powerful. And I think if I think about like my fondest days of college, those are some of them. It's being able to go to those Wednesday night Memorial Road College ministry classes. Mini church is what it felt like.
Yeah, well, when you're putting 700 people in I guess at that time it was our old auditorium, so it was more like a fellowship hall, multi-purpose room. It was a pretty powerful time. I remember those times. You have a moment? I have one. You have a behind the beards moment?
Go for it.
I would just say, if you have a minister or a ministry leader or someone that teaches your class regularly, know that sometimes, you find yourself in a moment where what you are teaching and preaching kind of comes rather quickly. But most of the time, there is a lot of angst, a lot of pressure, a lot of sweat, and a lot of prayer that goes into the lessons that you're being given.
Yeah.
And for me, everybody that walks out of church on Sunday morning will shake my hand or now give me a fist bump or an elbow bump and say, "Hey, man, appreciate it. Good sermon," and they'll walk on. And those are valuable. Those little moments are valuable to me. But the moments that are really valuable are the ones where people gives me one thing specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Like, "Hey, man, when you said this," it might be the only thing in that 35-minute sermon that you heard. But when there is something specific that you bring, that really resonates with a minister, with a teacher, with someone that has prepared. Even if it's something that is just straight off the outline that you filled out, or just one little detail, but something specific is something that will really hit home to those people that are teaching your classes. And the other thing is, if we say something funny, we likely know that we've said something funny, and don't feel like you can't come and laugh with us about that.
Oh yeah.
Because if I can't laugh at myself and enjoy the fact that we're imperfect, then I'm thinking too highly of myself. And so enjoy those moments, have fun with those moments. You can even bring them back up later and say, "Hey, we're not going to say this again, are we?" Or cracking a joke about those things, because even in those moments, it helps us realize that not just what we do matters, but that people are there, they're in tune. And sometimes even when they look like they're checked out, it may be because they've gone somewhere with something that we've said.
Yeah.
That may be, go ahead.
Nothing's better than messing up a Bible name that you've been practicing all week, right? Or a people or a city or a place you've been practicing all week so that you can say it right. And then you have to get up there and you have to go, and yeah, and you just like keep moving forward.
I don't know why I get Peter and Paul mixed up so much. Like if I'm in Peter, I always say Paul. And when I'm talking about Paul, I always say Peter. It's like, man, I know it's not Peter, it's Paul.
Some Old Testament Bible names are kind of really rough.
Some of them are, yeah.
And
so similar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Jehoiakim, Jehoiakim, Josiah, Joash, Jehoash.
These are showing off now.
I can't tell you exactly what they did. I just know that they all sound similar. The other thing that one of the greatest lessons I learned from, I'm trying to think which one of it may have been Ronnie White. I think it was Ronnie White.
That was a good class.
It was a good class. He said, we've been trained as preachers that we have to hold people's attention for 25 to 45 minutes, however long you're going to preach. And he said, that's just not true. Like, you want people to wander off. You want to say something that takes them somewhere. And the best thing I learned from him is when you are preaching, you need to constantly create inroads that bring you back into the sermon and allow you to catch up and pick up where we are. Because the objective of your sermon or your class is for people to take something, take it away and apply it. But you have to provide a way for them to come back in and
so
re-engage.
Like, that is so genius. Like, there's so much more in preaching than like speech writing and things like that. It always makes me like, if you are preaching full-time or teaching full-time, there is so much more work. There's so much more thought that goes into, and I think that's my behind the beards moment for you, is that there is so much more planning and thought in most people's, I'm going to say, because we do got some lazy preachers. We do got some lazy youth ministers out there. Okay. But most of the time there is so much more pre-planning and pre-thought that is going into sermons and classes than you could ever imagine. It is not something that you just wake up and kind of do. There are I know some really great fill-in preachers, and they've got 5 or 6 super awesome sermons. But there's a difference between fill-in preaching and being a minister and preaching full time and working and doing these kind of things like that. Exactly. Like having these inroads and outroads in your sermon, designing your sermon so that you can do that, so that people have those opportunities. Holy moly.
And even our classes, right? I mean, sometimes we give kids a hard time because we think they're not paying attention. And maybe that's fair because a lot of times they aren't.
But you also don't know their pre-circumstances. Like
right.
Wednesday night, they have sat in school all day, and then they had sports or something, and then they did homework. And so now you're telling them, hey, I need you to come back at 7:00 at night and do school for another 45 minutes. Okay, youth ministers, we got to think about that. We got to think about what's the message that we're preaching there. We're preaching that studying God's word is like going to school. I don't want that message. And so we have to,
so much deeper than that.
So much deeper than that, for sure. Sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, you're good. At SoulQuest, when, we're teaching, 3 classes a day, their days are full of activities. It's hot. They're worn out. And they come into a classroom, and sometimes it's dark, it's cool. And I would have counselors there at SoulQuest, and a kid would nod off and fall asleep, and they'd try to wake him up. It's like, let him sleep. He has 15 other classes this week that he's going to go to.
Right.
If right now he's in this space where what he really needs is rest, let him have rest. If he starts snoring, nudge him. Okay. I don't want anybody snoring in class.
I know that keynote is better than my Bible class. So if he's rested and can listen to the keynote, that's great.
Yeah. And, just the distraction of some of those things is greater. Let him have what he needs there. And even if there's only 3 other kids in that class that are up and they're engaged, I know they're going to get what they need from what the Spirit is going to work in me to tell them. And that takes me getting out of myself, right? And saying, no, I'm the teacher. You're going to wake up and you're going to listen to me because what I have to say is important. And realizing that God has put me here for a specific purpose. And some of these kids may be here for a very specific purpose as well. And I assure you, if that kid really, really, really needed to hear what I had to say today, the Spirit would keep him awake to hear what he needs to hear.
Right.
And I know that sounds kind of ethereal and out there, but I believe that because it allows me to not think so much about what I have to say, that it's so super important, and that these that are here and ready to engage and ready to embrace what's being taught are really going to take something that they can really apply and use.
Yeah. There's definitely something about that idea, that principle of celebrating those who show up, celebrating those who are there, pouring into those who are there. I believe Jesus did it with his disciples and his apostles, and poured into those who went the long haul and showed up and all that kind of stuff.
And let me be clear, I am not giving my church people permission to sleep through my sermons. Okay, not what I'm saying at all.
That's right. It's true.
Oh, hey, that's good stuff.
So it's a good podcast today. This was something that was been on Josh's heart. So this is a good one. I enjoyed it. We want to thank you guys for being here today. We appreciate you. We love you. We want to serve you in any way we can. If you have comments or ideas or questions or thoughts or anything like that, you can go ahead and hit us up on our email or our Facebook page. We respond. We'll talk back to you. We can send messages back. Even if you have topic ideas, episode ideas, and things like that, let us know. Share and like the page. Send it to your friends. We'd love to get more people involved, more people to see our content, and to just be able to interact with them. But we want to thank you guys for being here today. But we also want to remind you something that's extremely important to us here on Behind the Beards. It is Galatians 6:9. Do not grow weary in doing good.
Good. Yep.
This world's messy. We've seen that this last year, this last 4 years, this last 8 years. We see it every single day, how messy this world is. And life is just messy. So allow Christ to use you and do something different. And I mean that. Do something really different in the eyes of this world. Something that's good in his name. I'm Aaron. This is Josh. And we will see you next week on Behind the Beards.
Till we're all growing a beard. A man's face should never be bare. We just want some facial hair. We're anticipating, yeah, everyone's waiting for a beard.